Hey third graders! Last time we talked a little bit about printmaking and the history of printmaking, how prints were created, why prints were created, and what has evolved or changed over time in art using printmaking. Today we're going to review some of the essential questions that I need you to know, the learning goals that we have for this project. So let's get started. Some of the questions that you need to be able to answer for this project are: how is a traditional print created? What was the original purpose of printmaking? When we create prints or print series, what are some principles and elements, our art vocabulary, that are important to remember? And when you make a print, what happens to that image when it gets put onto the paper? At the bottom you can see a link, and it goes to the Museum of Modern Art, and it's an interactive website that allows you to kind of create different prints using different methods that we aren't going to cover for this project. So I really hope you look at that website. It's a really cool link. So once ink is applied to the printing plate, you press that paper on and smooth it down. And then what's going to happen to that image? Once the paper is pulled up, the image gets reversed, remember? So anytime that you want to create a printing block by carving and you want it to say something, you have to make all of the letters in the words backwards, which is very, very challenging. And one of the original purposes of printmaking was to be able to spread information like books and pictures to lots of people very quickly. So there are two categories of printing. So we have subtractive, where you carve away the extra parts of the image, and then we have additive, and that's where you create the image and put it onto the printing plate. And that is what we are going to do. We are creating a collagraph print, and it's the additive method. One of the principles and elements that we need to remember is the positive and negative space. Positive space is the area that you want people to look at, the focal point, and the negative space is the space around it. Artists want to try to create balance between the positive and negative space in their artwork so things don't look out of place. If you have too much negative space around your focal point, it's going to look very empty. But if you have too much positive space, it's going to look very, very full. So we want to try to create a balance between that. And when we're creating our collagraph plate today of our robots, using those geometric shapes, we can create a balance with the positive and the negative space. Guys, I love seeing your sketches, so let's get started with our collagraph. Remember, Graders, last time I saw you, we created our printing plate for our robot Collagraph. And remember, a collagraph is when you do the additive method for printmaking. We added these geometric shapes on top. So we added lots of triangles and rectangles, squares, ovals, your math shapes. And then I added some of that glue on top to make those little dots. So that is one that I made earlier, but here's the one that we worked on together. So I'm going to show you how to start creating your images. So printmaking is when you transfer an image from one surface to another. So normally when we do printmaking, you would put ink onto here, onto your printing plate with a big roller. It's called a brayer. And then you would take that printing plate and you would press it onto your paper and rub it down. But because we don't have printing ink right now, we're going to do a different way. So if I were to print this, it would reverse. So anytime you had a letter or a number, it would be backwards unless you created it the correct way. But today what we're going to do is we're going to use a crayon to do our texture it's like a texture rubbing. So I'm going to show you two different ways to do that. So I'm going to take my copy paper, really thin paper, and I'm going to put my robot underneath. And then I'm going to put my paper on top. And I'm going to hold down my printing plate underneath and the paper at the same time so that it doesn't move around. And I'm going to turn it so that it's easier on my hand as well. Just like when we did texture plate rubbings. So now I'm going to use the side at an angle. And you can see my robot starting to come through in that image. If you had like silver crayons or something like that, that would look really cool for this project. So this is also getting all of that background space, that negative space. Remember, negative space is not the focal point, that's not the main idea of an image, but it helps to create balance as well. So I'm going over the whole picture in big motions all the way across. I'm not pushing super hard because if I push too hard then it's just going to be one big black blob. I'm going to move my hands down a little bit. It can be kind of tricky once you first start, but you'll get the hang of it. And it's actually better not to have really pointy crayons. So there's my robot, done with one of the coloring methods. If the printing plate moves underneath, you're going to get weird images. So there's one robot, pretty cool looking. And now I'm going to show you a different way. The other way to do it is if you have a crayon without paper on it. So I'm going to use this crayon here. It's a piece of a big crayon. And you're going to do it on its side. So again, you're going to hold down the printing plate and the copy paper, and you'll press with the crayon and push away. Both ways work just fine. You'll see that you get more negative space with this method. It almost looks like he has a mask on. And then I'm going to pull down this way. So I'm pressing and pulling or pressing and pushing. I'm not rolling the crayon, that wouldn't work. So you can try to go this direction now as long as you don't move it. And one of the reasons that this is really cool to do is because you can try different colors without getting your printing plate all messy. Okay, so I've done two different kinds. You could also use this and color on top with some markers or colored pencils. So I could use some colored pencils to do some details and color in the Collagraph plate. You could still use the Collagraph plate to make images like this, even if you've already colored it, because that won't show up as long as it's dry materials. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed this project, and this is something you can do with any kind of image. You can do your letter initial, You could do flowers or trees or a football or any kind of image that you want. You just have to make sure that your layers aren't super thick. I would say no more than 2 pieces of cardboard on top, like here. And make sure that you don't reverse it if you're just doing crayon rubbings. Remember to show me your pictures when you go onto our Flipgrid. There's that section just for 3rd grade. Alright guys, I look forward to seeing all of your robots. Bye!